Not, I tell my clients, like, it's so easy to spiral down. Why not spiral up? It takes a little more effort, but it's so worth it.
Have you ever had a moment in your life where you felt like the universe just kicked you square in the junk? Well, from my experience, these low moments can set us up for some amazing things if we have the right mindset, the right attitude to find the lesson, to look inside ourselves and try to become a better version of ourselves. My name's Nathaniel Burke, and I'm the host of the show Kicked in the Junk. I hope you enjoy. Well, Anita, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Welcome to the show. I'm excited you're here. I don't think we've spoken in a while, but we used to work together at the gym. Seems to be where you meet everybody. And things have changed quite a bit since then for you. And now you're a life coach, which I'm super interested in because this is the field that I'm exploring and navigating.
Yes.
More on like the business side and the relationship side. But I'm really curious to hear what you're doing now, why you're doing it, and let's kind of dive into that.
Yeah, so I've been doing life coaching for, part-time at least for 9 years and full-time more recently. And I do individual coaching and I also do group coaching. I've got a few different group coaching programs.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so one's a year-long program and we kind of delve into everything about who you are, what you want, create the vision for the year, get rid of the messes in your life, help you get connected to your values, your superpowers, your strengths, and so that people can live their best life.
Right. I love that. And you probably see a range of people.
Yes.
What is something that you find, what's like the most common group you're getting right now, or even just issues that you're finding people are having?
Yeah, so I'd say there's probably three main issues, three main situations people find themselves in. So I would say one
just
is
things they want to overcome.
One is when people find themselves in transitions.
Okay.
They're like, what do I do now? Who am I? Right? Like we're exploring that. So it could be empty nesters. It could be people going through a divorce. It could be people going through a job change. Just I'm in a different place of life and what I did doesn't fit with who I am now.
Right. So some big changes there.
Yeah. So it's just like people in transitions in whatever, time or season of life.
Yeah. Season of life is a good one.
It's people that want more.
Yep.
So they're like, I'm meant for more.
Yeah.
I can do more. There's more to life. Like my life has gone stale and blah. I'm meant for more. Right. Mm-hmm. So people who want to get to the next level, who want to grow. Those two things are very common. And then the third thing would probably be if people say, well, I've got one or two major areas of life that are out of balance or not what I want. Mm-hmm. It's like my spiritual life is perfect, my finances suck. Yeah.
The opposite.
My fitness life is perfect, but my relationships suck, or my career's, or I want a good career, and it's whatever. It's like they're highly successful in one or more areas, but then the other area, they have a major area that needs work.
And it's funny you say that because I've seen that more and more. Where people have exactly that. It's like fitness, they're like absolutely crushing it, but the relationships there are useless because one person's doing this, the other person's doing that. Or, like I said, spiritually, like just so, they're doing all these amazing things, but yet they can't pay their bills or can't do certain things.
Yes.
So I guess diving into that a little bit, what are some common things you use to help people bridge the gap, or even like a really good one I find, because I come from a Christian background, grew up in that community, if you will, and I'm reading some books on it, but it's interesting the connection, or rather the disconnection between spirituality and financial fitness, for lack of a better, or just financial well-being. It's like, if you're spiritual, you can't, like, you don't have money. And if you have money, you clearly can't be spiritual. So, and it's even something that I've had to, through my process, unlearn and realize, like, money isn't the root of all evil.
No.
Right? It doesn't have, and this is what a really good book I'm reading, Money, a Love Story. Kate Northrup, I think, is doing it. Anyway, but essentially it's just part of the things that came up during this book, and you have to write down and do some exercises and stuff,
yes,
is the fact that I was always under the impression, especially growing up, money is the root of all evil. And it's like, and like you said, it's
the love of money.
Well, even further, because she talks about like loving money isn't wrong. It's when you're greedy and when you're willing to hurt other people for money and do wrong things for money, and typically that comes out of misalignment. So I guess my question for you is, how do you help? Because it sounds like you've helped people in that gap before.
Yes.
What are maybe like a couple easy things just to help people realize they have an issue there, or maybe there's something there that they might need to, or wouldn't be encouraged to address?
Well, I think exactly what you were talking about. It's like, what do you think about money? What do you feel about money? Like writing it out and bringing that to your awareness. Like, money is unspiritual. Money is, and just be conscious, first of all, what your money blueprint is. Right? Because we all come with, we grew up, maybe like our dad viewed money like this and mom viewed money like this. We were taught this. Like, so just first of all, bringing that to awareness, right? What's true, what's limiting. Years ago, I went to a conference for kind of how to change my money mindset. Yeah. And it was Marshall Silver. Highly recommend him. Okay. I went to a few of his conferences, and it's just changing the mindset, of like, it's possible for me to be a millionaire. Absolutely. And just breaking down any kind of limitations for that. I've read tons of books on the subject about money. And here's, like, if you want a spiritual one too, there's a couple good books by a rabbi. Okay. And it's like Business Secrets from the Bible, and it's have you read that one?
No, but interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and Thou Shalt Prosper. Kind of thing, right? And so, and I heard one guy say too, okay, if mixing the spiritual part, if poverty were such a virtue, we would have poverty in heaven.
That's a fair point. Yeah. Yeah.
So
and I mean, and again, too, I can come from the background, but again, there's this belief that we talk about the money is evil, and those that want money and those that love money are evil. But then when you start having money, then you kind of create this idea where, now I have money. The subconscious training is to you give it away or you do something with it, and you create a pit for yourself. Yes. And you create some resentment for yourself. Yes. And then that's a whole rabbit hole that you can dive down and just go spiraling down in. So it's interesting that came up, and it's interesting that I'm reading a book on that. So maybe let's explore that for a little bit. So you are helping people move through this, and you said writing it down.
Well, that's one of the things, just to be aware, what are your thoughts, what are your beliefs about money, what have you been told about money, even going back to like, what were some of your first memories about money?
Yes, and that's exactly, so it's funny you said that, because that's exactly what I did in this book. Oh, yeah. And it was fascinating what came up. So anybody that's listening, I've never journaled for years. I was like, I'm journaling. I'm like, whatever. I'm quite a deep thinker. Like, I love to just like have my thoughts go through my head. But I'm like, well, I do that. It's the same. It's interesting what comes up when you journal. It really is. And I'm doing this exercise, and I'm going like, well, whatever. And then it's like, okay, what are your thoughts about money? And she gives these phrases in this book. And I'm like, oh, well, this, and this. And if you have money, you're a rich prick. And this, and this. And like, you think of all these phrases. And I'm like, where have I heard that phrase? Yes. Where have I heard this phrase? So parents, maybe not. Movies, I know for sure. Yeah. Society, for sure. Because what do people that don't have money do? They demonize people with money.
Exactly.
And how many times, and I realized, I was talking to my wife, I'm like, oh my God,
do you ever think that you're attracting that non-poverty to you by what you say and what you think? Yeah. It's like, no, if that's how you view money, they're cursed, then you don't want that, like, subconsciously. Yes. Right? And so you have to, like, I wish them well, good for them.
Totally. And it's so funny, because the people that I know personally they're the most wonderful people. Most of them. Most of them are absolutely wonderful and great humans.
Generous.
But totally.
And they can use their money for good.
Yeah. And it's funny enough because in the book, they're like, okay, write down who, and I'm going, okay, well, who do I know? And the people that came to mind were some like people that I know really, very well. And I'm like, oh yeah, they're super generous. They're super nice. They're like some of the best people I know. And I was like, wait a minute. So where is this coming from? So it was interesting that it wasn't, it was like this ambiguous idea of, rich people. Well, who's rich people? Well, them. And it was like, okay, so give an example. Every example I had except for one, and again, you're always going to have asshole people or just asshole people. Yeah. They're out there. Yeah. Rich or poor, they're out there. But most of them were like, they're like really good humans. Huh. Interesting. Okay. And then I came to the realization that how many times again in society do we say that, the richy rich, we're going over these like phrases that you hear in movies and you hear in like, conversations. So I'm like, this is interesting. So that's a very good point. I'm glad you brought that up, is journaling and just recognizing your own thoughts around it and just even realizing that they're there.
Yeah. And that's a big thing. Like what coaching does, it brings awareness.
Yes. Yeah.
So that you can have a choice to change if you want to or not, right? Yeah. But without that awareness, you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
And so many people don't know, like they live on autopilot. They don't think about things, and it's not brought to their awareness.
Absolutely, so, and I love that you said that. It's is the autopilot, and how much in our lives do we go on autopilot? I mean, I read a study on it, and it was like 95% of our lives is subconscious, and only 5% is conscious. So, like, first of all, crazy.
Yeah.
To think about.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder, okay, what are you feeding that subconscious mind? And again, if you're feeding a subconscious mind, again, this is like unintentionally half the time, most of the time, money is bad, or rich people are assholes, rich prick. If you say these things, even just saying those things.
Your words have power.
Yeah, and it was all these realizations that I came to, and recently, and again, it wasn't like knocking on anybody that I know personally, because as soon as I did the exercise, oh my God, none of this is true. Yeah. So very interesting. So I guess my next question is, after, not to go into like complete detail of it, but if somebody does go, okay, I'm writing this down and there's some stuff coming up. Mm-hmm. I guess two things. How do you avoid, or what are some tips you do to keep them from falling in the trap of negativity? Of, oh my God, how could I think this of other people and blah, because I had to check myself, because I'm like, oh my God, I'm such an, like, wow, I'm a terrible, like, in my head, I'm like, wow, I'm a terrible person. This. And I had to go, no, these are just my thoughts. Okay, I can address it. But what are some things that you do to help catch people and then maybe move past that?
Well, it's okay. So it's just awareness, but you can have awareness without making judgments.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's like, okay, there's this thing, but you don't have to make a judgment about it.
And I think that's the key there, is just letting
acceptance.
Yeah.
Okay, I see that. Now that it's good. Yeah. Now that I'm aware of it, like, how does this serve me? And it's always like, is this serving me? Like, you recognize those thoughts aren't serving you.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So that's not serving me, so only have what serves you, kind of thing. Right? What's working for you.
And I think to backpedal on that a bit is, and you do this, but even just knowing what you want, right? Again, using money as an example, well, if you're super happy financially, well, then maybe this isn't the best conversation, or maybe this isn't the right train of thought. But if you are struggling financially, and again, seems to be a pattern, right? It's not, okay, well, I struggled, now I have this thing. It's great if there's a pattern, address it.
Yeah, and one thing is, like, with ongoing coaching is like, and I have a coach. Every coach should have a coach, right? So like, just, bringing the awareness of, like, through my coach, I'm recognizing some of my own patterns, and like how when I get blocked, how do I get blocked? How do I get unblocked? Right? There's common things.
Right.
And so you can recognize your own patterns with, if you're conscious of that, you can recognize some of your patterns and things that trip you up. And then it's like, maybe it I might be tripping up in the same thought pattern or process in a different area of my life.
Yes. So, yeah, that's a really good point. I've used the term like, sometimes it's even something that's like a trigger word.
Yeah.
Or a phrase that just like automatic. For me, it used to be like, oh, I can't afford this. And it was just like, I was just like, oh, and I would just say it. And then I started realizing like, wait a minute. Like if I'm
choosing not to buy this at this time.
Yeah. Or another one from this book was, I don't see the value in this right now.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But if you just have that as your automatic response,
you're speaking that over your life.
Yeah. Which is interesting. And that has power.
Yes.
And, a good example on that is like, if you get somebody to say like silk, silk, silk 3 times fast, and then what do cows drink? And everybody says milk. It's like, right? It's like the power of words. It's like, well, no, cows don't drink milk. They drink water. Calves. Right. But it's the power of words because you're just like in repetition. So it's something to just, again, bring awareness to, like you said, and then recognize, do you want to change this or not? Or is this serving you or not?
Right.
So for your own life then, I'm curious, you've gone through this.
Yes.
We all have. I mean, anybody in that work is going through it. And if you're comfortable talking about it, you've gone through some changes in your own life in relationships.
Yes.
And those two can tie together closely. Recently divorced?
Not recently. It's been 2017.
Oh, okay. So
yeah.
Quite, yeah. So the podcast is called Kicked in the Junk.
Oh yeah,
because
that was a kicked in the junk year.
Yeah, because sometimes life just hits you with things that you're unaware of.
Yes.
So, or just it's coming and it hurts anyway. Sometimes more than you're expecting. I think I kind of gave a definition to it, and I think that's what it is. It's when it's more than when it's unexpected or more than expected, and hits you hard.
Or both.
Yeah, those are the best ones. So, do you want to maybe dive into that a little bit, or just how that felt, and then more importantly, like what did you do to move through that? Because a lot of people will get in relationships, and it can be such a wonderful thing, but then the breaking of that and the changing of that can be such a wonderful thing as well, but it doesn't seem so wonderful at the time.
Oh, exactly. It was not fun at the time. It was, so there was, betrayals, abuse, kind of like not physical, but other in all its other forms. And I just our relationship went off a cliff like that very fast. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't expecting it. Right. And so anyways, it's like, okay, this is where I'm at.
Yes.
I got to get out of here. Right. Yeah. So I also left as soon as possible. Right. Like I got out. So I lost my marriage, I lost my home, kind of thing. And my best friend, like a couple months later, it was kind of like, woo, a triple bah. Yeah. But, so anyways, when I was going through and I got out kind of thing, got to a safer place. And so I, one thing I did every day for, I think a year, I wrote down 5 things I was grateful for.
I love that.
Right. So
it's so funny you said that, because when I went through right before me and Max split up, I did the exact same thing. I would do 3 things or 5 things. I can't remember what it was, but I'd write it every day, and it was it's wild the impact it makes.
Absolutely.
And when you look at studies, it actually changes your brain.
It does.
It changes how your brain perceives life. So I say it's like you can't see the world. The world looks different the world looks like shit with shit colored glasses on, right? Like if you're literally, the point is if you're always thinking it's negative, it's all going to be negative. You're not even going to see the upside, and most of the time you're not even aware of it. I'm not negative in this, and it's like, okay, well, clearly you are. Yeah. Right? So
how can you look? How can this be positive, right?
Yes, exactly.
You talk about finding the lessons, which definitely there were lessons. Yeah. I also like to say, what are the gifts?
Ooh, I like that better.
Because what does lessons connotate? Yeah. It's like hard
lessons.
And
fine, I guess you're right. Yeah.
But it's a gift, and some of my gifts were, okay, now I know this, right? So it's like, okay, so I got to find my blind spots, right? Because you can't change another person. You can only change yourself.
Yes, and that's very true, and I think sometimes people, myself included in the past, we try to do that where it's like, oh, I want you to be like this. Mm-hmm. And me and my wife were talking about this yesterday. It's like, how many times have you heard people, oh, I wish they would just do this. I wish they would just do this. And you can't.
No.
And on top, well, it's funny because it's funny to think about it now, but it's sad because sometimes people, you see that and you're like, one, that's not possible. And two, sometimes that thing that you're trying to change in them is also the thing that makes them amazing and special. A good example is, I give this example to my wife, and she knows I love her to death, but is, she's crazy. And I mean, this is all love, and it's like, yeah, she's crazy. She has moments where it's like, she's kind of like wild, and like these emotions are coming up, and I'm going like, man, and I have these quick thoughts like, what is going on? This is insane. And then right, okay, she's going through this, okay. Yeah, it's pretty crazy right now. But I'm like, wait a minute, but this is also the crazy that like pushes me to do other things. Spontaneous. And do things that push me out of my comfort zone and push me past my bubble and sometimes that crazy can be fun.
Yes.
Sometimes crazy can be fun with games, with parties, in the bedroom. Like there's a lot of like, oh right. So when you realize
it's part of the package.
It's part of the package. And so you accept it. And again, I'm not saying accept like, okay, there's certain things that are just not okay. A good example is like, hey, this guy hits me all the time, or she hits me all the time, because I'm seeing that more too, which is crazy. But like guys getting hit or women getting hit, it's like, hey, that's not who they are, or maybe they're doing that, maybe they need to move away. But looking at it with that like love, or if there is that opportunity there.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and I think too, like it was an opportunity to learn about boundaries, to learn about I found the place in time, because I'm like, this can never happen again. I can never have this ever happen in my life again. So what can I do so this never happens again? Ooh,
I like that, because I did the exact same thing. I was like, no, I'm never being in a relationship with this, and I'm never being in a relationship with that.
Yes.
And I look back at it now, and that was the toughest lesson, toughest gift. but it's true. It was the toughest gift, was looking back and going, how much did I allow?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And again, and I mean that in like, because there's certain times where it's like, okay, let's say again, let's just use hitting for example. They hit you. Okay, well that was them doing that. But if you continue to stay with them and you don't draw hard lines and boundaries and all that, that's you. Like, it sounds terrible, but if you just keep feeding into that and allowing it, and I know that can get misconstrued, but hopefully nobody does, but just understanding that if you don't do something about it, take immediate and extreme action, then you're allowing it to continue.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's consciously, sometimes it's, and the worst part is when it's unconscious, because they're not even aware.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was something that I had to do. Was like, okay, I was unconsciously unaware of that stuff I was allowing, and then now I'm like, oh yeah, I allowed them to treat me like that. I allowed them to, and it was probably she probably say the same about me, and that's okay. But it was just you allow for that. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the gifts that just some like general like boundaries or things that you learned from that going into any other relationships that you'd be like, hey, for anybody else, this is a good.
Well, I think too, like, so you teach people how to treat you.
Yes. Yeah.
So also making that intentional part of your life for like, self-care, like treating yourself well, listening to your voice. Cause I recognize the exact point in time when I stopped listening to my voice.
Oh,
and it was
one.
a few months before we got engaged.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I was like, I didn't discover that until after I was out.
Yes,
I was
of course.
like, oh my gosh, that's when I stopped listening to my voice.
And your voice being, I've heard your voice being your gut feeling.
Yes, your gut feeling, intuition.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
So yeah, that was very eye opening. So, and I think.
Do you mind me asking, like, what was that moment? Is that okay?
Well, I won't get into some specifics, but it was. So we had been dating for a year and a half, right? And I found something out, and I was like, whoa, So we broke up, and I was like, we can't get together unless this, and this is done.
Yeah.
And then like, we got back together like 2 months later. And then he proposed, and then we were married. I stopped journaling, and so that's what, like, I literally stopped listening to my voice and speaking to myself, because it's like, because those things didn't happen. So
Right. Okay. I like how you said that there. You stop listening to yourself and stop listening to your voice. And that's, really...
That's a huge lesson. Gift.
Yeah. Yeah. Lesson sounds nice sometimes too.
Lesson I think is more fitting for this one. The gift is now that I do honor and listen to my voice. So there you go.
Exactly. But I like how you said that, is that it's listening to yourself. And I think that's maybe a new way for myself even, to look at journaling. And for anybody that is listening, that's like in that tough spot, listen to yourself. Mm-hmm. Now, I did a podcast with Tanya. She's amazing, and she does a lot of somatic therapy. She even talks about sometimes that voice is so messed up that like you can't even listen to yourself.
Right.
And so that's where things get tricky. That's a different branch. But for me, and because I know those different voices, I've had them in my head where sometimes you're like, what the hell? And this woman's crazy. But I have to like come back to no, what do I know is true? Mm-hmm. Right? And what do I know from the past? And what do I know from like right now? And sometimes for me, that's meditating. That's breathing. Yeah. That's just making sure my cup is full.
Yes.
First. And again, so meditation, breathing, sitting with that, letting those thoughts come through, not clinging on to them.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is that that's where I started noticing and trusting my own voice and my own gut. Because there's a lot of times you're like, right, and I can think of a few times now in my previous relationship where I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't listen to myself here. And I didn't listen to myself there. Yeah. And my gut was saying this and I ignored it. And my gut was saying this and I ignored it because of this and because of this, or the hope of this, or the wish of this, or that I wanted, whatever. So it is a fine line, but for me, I always tell people to start with that first before if you're like, oh, I'm going through this, what do I do? Start with just meditation, start with just breathing, or whatever that means right now to fill your cup up. But I say the being present's critical, because that's how you listen.
Being present, yeah.
That's how you listen to your own voice. Like, how can you listen to yourself with your phone? My favorite thing to do is scroll Instagram. Okay, well, you're not like listening to yourself. You're just getting fed. So, or watching TV, same thing. So do something active. Do something that just gets your heart going. Mm-hmm, and then be present, do some breath work, whatever that looks like, pray, close your eyes and just sit and just be with your thoughts. Or just some really like easy that so many people can benefit from. Yeah.
And I think too, even what you're saying, like doing things that you love is important. Like getting back in touch, especially when you've been in a tricky relationship, getting back to, like, I felt like some of that was, is coming back to myself. Because I had kind of lost myself in the relationship. Yeah, and so it's like, okay, I'm getting back to doing some of the things I love, traveling, doing acting again, things that I kind of slowly put on the back burner because now I was like so focused on this relationship that wasn't very healthy. Yeah. Just trying to, I didn't realize that I was going down this path of like, I'm doing everything now to just try to save this relationship, which it was kind of a losing battle. And knowing, anyways. So, but it's being aware, like, what are the things that you love? And my program that I'm going to, my group coaching program is called Return to You.
Ooh, I like that.
Right? So
I love that.
Coming back to the best of you.
And is that for... it could be anybody, but my head went immediately to people coming out of relationships.
Well, yeah, and it is a little bit more directed specifically to certain types of relationships.
Cool.
That's you've been in, but yeah.
That's interesting because me and my wife do that to help couples move through stuff like that. So that's interesting. We'll have to talk about more. But I love what you said earlier about like doing the things that you love, and you said you started acting. So what were some other things that you started to do? Just, or even, I would say this, and this was a tough one for me, is to love yourself again. I just love being, say alone, but just be with yourself.
Yeah. Well, I guess some of the other things that I did afterward was, like getting, like traveling again. Okay. This is a 2-part question. Sure. I'm answering it in 2 parts. So like,
you can answer it any way you want.
Yeah. So I went on I reconnected with tons of friends. Like, it was a great time for reconnection. Like, some of my American friends, some of my, like, I had a reunion with some girlfriends. We hadn't seen each other for 16 years, but we studied in Italy together. And then one of them, she became my travel buddy. So we went to, like, Newfoundland. Awesome. We went to Peru. Like, so it's, I started playing volleyball again, but then, and I hadn't done that forever. Got back into acting. Decided, hey, I'm going to learn how to swim. So I haven't really done that since, but anyways, I took some swimming lessons.
Did you put on the water wings?
No, but I should have. No. So, but it's interesting, right? Everybody had their own journey in the last few years.
Totally.
So I definitely I'm totally fine with hermiting by myself. The last few years. That was also kind of when there's different. So another thing with gifts, you have opportunities.
Yeah.
Like, in times of what I call reinventing yourself, whether it's, a job or getting in or out of a relationship, right? Mm-hmm. So it's so there's these times where we reinvent ourselves, and then it's like you discover things that you love, you rediscover things, you discover new communities, new friends, you rediscover old friends. Yep. So it's like there's the discovery, rediscovery in people, in things that you love to do.
Yeah, and you know what? Yeah. It's good because it's building that community.
Yeah.
I've said this lots. Like, we're on this earth, we need each other on this earth. As much as people think, I don't need anybody. It's like, well, that's unfortunate you feel that way, but that's how we've survived as a species. It's a deep, deep human need, and unfortunately, it gets filled with the wrong things. A lot of artificial things versus like actual connections, actual conversations, meeting for coffees, having dinner parties, game nights, like just even volleyball teams, doing whatever, like traveling, all these, there's a lot of things, big or small, right? Even just going for a walk with friends, having a group that you walk with and you just talk about whatever, right? Like we need that community, and that's such a powerful way to move through those tough times.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So, is there other, in your journey now that you've kind of moved through this, how are you finding these lessons, these gifts, help? How are you finding these gifts help with your people that you're helping now, your clients and people that come to you looking for more?
Well, I think one of the things, first of all, is there's an exercise that, we may or may come to, depending on the person's situation, is like, how is your present perfect? Instead of just like, eventually you look back and, okay, I see how that was good. When you're in it, how do you see that this bad thing or whatever is serving you right now?
Can you explain it a different way? I want to understand it. Like, so how...
Okay, so you just come out of your divorce.
Sure, yeah, let's go with that. Yeah.
At that time, if you can think back to that time.
Yeah.
How was it perfect even then?
Right. So another word, or maybe I'm saying giving it a different meaning.
Yeah. So it's like, in a way, reframing it and how is this... how is this serving me? Right. Even this horrible thing, even this. How is this actually perfect?
Right. Yeah. Even in all the awful things that may have happened, could have happened before. No, I totally know what you mean. And I've seen that with a few people that have been on the show that have, like, again, been through like terrible relationships to like crazy accidents, and how, the first episode, he talked about how he was grateful for it. Grateful that he ended up in the hospital for months and months. Yeah. But he wanted a way to be with his family more and not have to be gone for 3 weeks at a time working up north or whatever it was. So exactly like that.
Yes.
It's
so that's how that was perfect.
Yes. I've even if you mind if I do, but like change the meaning.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Reframe.
Yeah. But no, I totally know what you're saying. Yes.
You can look at it from a different side.
Yes. Yeah. And
you'll get through it very differently if you look at it differently.
Yeah. It's like, I've given the example of before. It's like when you lose your job, I'm like, oh my God, I got fired, or this job's, whatever.
Yeah.
And then, well, what happened after that job? Well, this happened, but then I found this and this, and now I started my own business, is way better. And you're like, so what was wrong with that again? Right? Like, is there a way to look back at it and go, you know what, this was actually really wonderful that this happened, and this is something I'm still learning, but I've really tried to practice in the last few years, is like looking back at it with gratitude.
Yes.
And love, and go, you know what, it was good. Like, I'm glad that happened, and thankful. Yeah. I'm thankful that happened, because if that didn't happen, that wouldn't have done this.
Yes.
I've given this example before, and it's a really good example, was when I split up, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go in the dating world, and this is me. It's me awesome. It's not, first of all. It wasn't awesome. But, through some people I met a lady that I was like, oh, well, we'll go on a date. Went well. I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. And then she essentially was like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, you got your house and you got the kids and you're working and like you work out and you're responsible and all this. And I'm like, so, but I'm just not into that right now. Like, I just want to, like, because she just got a relationship. She's like, I just want to party and drink and have fun. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So I'm doing all these like things that seem right. And I was like, oh my God, I was so taken. I was so pushed back because I don't really go to bars or pubs. But it was funny though, because I was like upset about this. I'm like, you know what? It is what it is.
We're just not a fit.
It's not a fit. And I had to just make okay with it. But it was super funny because I met my wife. Neither of us drink.
Okay.
Not real, like, at all, almost at all. Our first time we met at the gym.
Yeah.
And our first date was at a pub. Her suggestion, which is so funny because I was actually not going to go. I was going to say, no, this is like, I don't want to do this. Yeah. But it wasn't because I only listened because that other person I went on that one date with, or 2 dates, said like, oh, I want, I like to do this, and I want to party and do other things, and or I think I can't remember how she worded it, but essentially it was like, you're kind of boring. I want to do, I want to go party or something. I like to go out with people that like to go to the bars and pubs and clubs, and that wasn't me. So I was like, man, maybe I need to like do that. So if it wasn't for her though saying that, I wouldn't have agreed to the date, and then would have met the love of my life. My soulmate.
See, so that's how that served
so it was
you.
a blessing. It was a blessing, and so that's one of my favorite kind of ways to. And again, it's a little thing, but there is ways you can spin that.
Absolutely.
In any scenario, it's just, I think the key is to be able to step away from it and to not have the emotional charge behind it, the negative emotional charge.
Yes,
behind
and because you can. Why not? I tell my clients, like, it's so easy to spiral down. Mm-hmm. Why not spiral up? It takes a little more effort, but it's so worth it.
No, you're right.
So spiral up.
That is such a great way to put it, because, I mean, our animal brains are so wired to defend and keep us safe, and everything's out there, and it's beautiful in that. It's a wonderful mechanism. I mean, there's many times where that's actually been helpful, right? Where you're like, I feel like I should stop, and you stop, and like, oh my God, there's somebody coming, I didn't even see them, or whatever. You almost got hit by a car or something, but sometimes it's too hyperactive, right? And if you're constantly like, oh, threat, well, then that's all you're going to see. So I love that. Why can't we spiral up?
Exactly.
That's a really...
Yeah, and just a couple other gifts that I had is like one of my best friends, I never would have met her if it hadn't been like kind of through this person that I was married to. You know, so there's, and hey, we moved to Kelowna.
Yep.
And so I met so many people that, I would have been in, maybe I would have stayed in North Vancouver, you know? So it's like, hey, it brought me here. Ugh, maybe not. But So, and what's interesting too, like, here's a real challenging situation. Mm-hmm. And this person is a beautiful person. I don't know her that well, but she was kind of associated in my running group. And as you know, all the fires on the west side, her house was one that burned down. Yeah. So they had nothing.
Yeah, Jesus.
But crazy. She, like, her attitude, I'm like, I don't think I would have handled it as well as she did. She's like, yeah, wow, we had everything there, and our house, and I don't even know how it is or how she is, but she's like, this could be the move that we've wanted, because we've been thinking about moving to Alberta, and we've got family, and so it's just like, so she was like, that's a pretty massive loss.
Yeah.
you know, your whole life and everything. And she was grateful and positive and just like, wild. It was such a, I'm like, I hope when I grow up I could be like her. She's like, wow, like that's just a testimony of somebody handling like so amazing. Like she never complained. Like they lost everything, like everything. And it was just, absolutely, it was stunning. Her response was incredible. So, and
you can even see now. You can like I can tell it was quite a bit because you're feeling it now.
I know because like
I'm feeling it now. But it just goes to show you like how you can really like the extreme you can get when you spiral up.
Yes.
Right? When you look to just constantly find the good and constantly try to find the opportunity. And I even find it day to day myself where I'm like, I have these thoughts like, what am I even doing? Why am I doing this? Blah, blah, blah. And I have to like check it all the time to be like, no, this is why you're doing it. Because I believe in the good in people. Because I believe I can help. Because I believe in that people have these amazing potentials. And continue to remind myself of that. So that's really amazing that, a story that she was able to do that and to move through that so well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still like, because our house was in the line of fire too, and I was like, so just like having that almost happen to me, I'm like, I don't know if I would have been as good as had the same like I'd try, but she was just like, she was there and she was in full peace. Yeah, and I was like, wow.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. So, going back to your coaching a little bit, what? Just for fun, what do you think? What is one of the most challenging things you come across right now? Because we talked about that, we dived into the money a little bit in the relation and the spirituality thing. But what do you think is like one of the most challenging problems you're seeing, or most common problems you're seeing, or problems, just things that people are wanting to work on?
Well, I think if there's just like one sort of type of problem, fear of the unknown.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right. And how to,
because like you said, you're seeing a lot of people wanting to change, they're in
but just with things going on in the world.
Right. Yes.
Right. So, I mean, that's maybe that was just a recent thing, but that's one of the things lots
before you're right.
So just all the uncertainty and, with, and there's a lot of things going on in the world right now. And so it's like, how do you, in the midst of all that, how do you, stay in your lane? Because you can't control all the world events and politics and all the crazy, So it's like, okay, so, and how, so also focusing on like, so you don't, like, people are like, okay, so I want my theme next year to be no fear. Okay, so what did you just hear? What was the operative word?
No, and fear.
Fear.
Yeah,
right? Exactly. And so it's like, okay, so do you want that in your life? Just being, again, aware.
Yes, and how you're saying it versus
of what you're focusing on.
Absolutely.
Instead of like, resilience. Yes. Maybe.
Yeah, or courage, or strength. Yeah. Or I want, or
that's a solid peace.
And it's funny because I've heard that lots before, like, oh, no fear or no this, but and absolutely, it's your. I've heard this before. It's like your brain can't comprehend negatives.
Right.
It's like when you say, and I mean that in like,
I want to lose weight.
or
so it thinks about weight.
Yeah, or even don't think of an elephant. What do you think about an elephant? Or I've seen this a lot. It's like, oh, I don't want to screw up and then end up screwing up. I've helped athletes before that. Oh, after this play, I just all I could think of was not doing this, and it's like, hear what you just said.
Yeah, you only focus on what you want.
Yeah,
right? So staying in that lane.
Yes, and I use the analogy of like if you go skiing or snowboarding, it's like if you're going through the trees, what are you focusing on?
The snow pattern, not the tree.
And I heard somebody said the trees, and I went, you're not a very good snowboarder. You're not a very good snowboarder or skier. If you're focusing on the trees, you're going to hit it. Yeah. No, you see them. Like you're aware in your peripheral, but your vision's here. Yeah. Right? So staying, focusing on what you want, not avoiding what you don't want.
Exactly.
Right? Because you're just going to bring that in. So I'm wondering then, what are some phrases, like I said, you're unaware of? Is there any other phrases you've heard that you're hearing a lot lately? They're just from some of your clients.
Well, yeah. So it's what's next?
Okay.
What's next for me?
Okay.
What's the next, so I mean, that's
more of like a neutral statement, maybe.
Yeah, that's probably more neutral statement, but that is common, like as far as where am I going to go next? So it's like in that process of reinventing, like who am I now? What do I want? Kind of things.
And still and still diving into the uncertainty.
Yes.
Part of it.
Yes, because there's certain. So it's interesting too, because I do the Enneagram group coaching, and there's certain personalities too that they want that certainty.
It's a basic human need, right?
Yes, but it's more prevalent, I think, within like certain types.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And some types, they don't want to be trapped, or some types are more focused on winning. Mm-hmm. So it's like, and some are just like, I need certainty. So it's interesting, and that, it would be interesting too if there's a correlation.
Yeah. So I guess my question then is. Let's say for anybody that is on that, I need certainty. Yeah. What would be like the easiest thing that they could adopt, whether it's language, whether it's focus, whether what would be like a little thing that you could just be, hey, you know what, this will help if nothing else.
Well, I guess it would depend on the person too, right?
Totally.
But some people are like, I might just frankly say, well, certainty is an illusion.
Yeah.
Just bringing that to the awareness.
That's actually a very good. I actually like that because.
Yeah.
You're right. It's like, oh well, I could be certain I wake up to it. Well, no, you actually don't. Oh, well, my breath. Okay, well, no, you there is in the realm of possibility that your heart could just stop at any given time. Like, it's in the realm. It's a small chance, obviously, for most people, but it's just the idea of like, right, okay, when you can accept that. Or just understand that like it is kind of this illusion, then it helps you move through it.
And again, if it's like, you can't change another person or circumstance, you can only change yourself. Right. So how are you going to deal with uncertainty then? Yeah. That's more like, who are you going to be? How are you, like, what are your tools? So a lot of coaching is like they have the answers.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm glad about that, because that's what I think is a big misinterpretation. Because I previously,
it's not consulting.
When people thought, oh, life coach, it's like, oh, okay, you're gonna tell me about my life. I don't need you. Like, it's not. It's the complete opposite. It's like, no, I'm
digging out of you.
Yeah, and you know what? A way I've kind of worded it, and hopefully I'm saying this right. It's like therapy deals in the past. Yes. And therapy is awesome. Everybody should do it at some point in their life. Yeah. Yeah. Coaching's the future. Coaching as in the present and the future. Yeah. Yes. And so, and I don't mean like metaphorically, I mean like quite literally, like they help you move through present times. Yes. And into the future. They don't, the past is for therapy and it has a time and place and is wonderful. So it's not, like you said, it's not telling, oh, well, here, your life's a mess. Well, you should get a job and you should ask this lady out. Yeah, exactly.
It's not counseling and it's not consulting.
No, it's like you said, it's helping them dig that out, which I think is so wonderful and definitely misunderstood by a lot of people, because it's, and I think part of it is understanding that you don't think you're better than anybody. Life coaches don't have that, oh, I'm better. Well, my life's perfect, so I will tell you, or I'll fail. No, it's like, no, this is just a skill that I have, and I love helping people figure it out. Yeah. Carpenters, why do they do carpentry? Most of them, especially if they're doing it, because they just love building stuff. Yeah. Why do teachers teach? Because they love teaching. Yes. Most of them. Some of them that don't, well, maybe they should do something different now. But like, you know what I mean? Like when you've been doing that long, most of the time they do it because they're passionate about it and they love doing it and they love the result of it. That's what coaching is. It's helping people realize their full potential. Yes. And that the answers are inside them, and helping them realize like, no, you have it. I might spark something, and there's tools that you give. Yeah. Because they've worked for you and they can help people, but that's different. How you use the tools on you. I'm just saying that there's a tool here. Yeah. So I think that's a really important distinction when addressing this stuff. And yeah, like you said before, I lost my train of thought on that one. Oh, that's okay.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, it's really, I love that you're doing that work. I think it's wonderful. I think more people need it. And oh, sorry, we were talking about the certainty. That's what we're talking about.
Oh, yes.
Certainty.
Yes.
Yeah, so because I'm thinking in my life, I always get excited when it's like, oh, this is something I could just, I know you can't tell somebody how to run their life, obviously, but like sometimes if you can just say that maybe the right thing in a good conversation, they'll go, oh, that's interesting, because so many people want certainty.
Yes.
So many people want that, and I like it, like you said, when you can realize like it's a bit of an illusion, right? And I've said this, and I still believe this is true. And you touched on it earlier. Is like there's only, for me, I actually did a podcast on how to. It was about uncertain times. There's only two things I say you can control in uncertain times: is your attitude and your effort.
Yes.
In any scenario.
Yeah.
All the rest is because you can always check your thoughts. You can always check how you're feeling and try to up spiral, not down spiral.
Yes. Yeah.
And then your effort towards that. Oh, I'm going to up spiral. Oh, I don't want to today. Okay, well, you're not putting in any effort. So how do you think your life is going to go? How can you want this and do that?
Yeah.
It takes effort. It takes a lot of effort to do anything really cool. And there's a reason why it's really awesome when you get there, because it takes a lot of effort and it takes a good attitude. So for me, that's what I always tell people, is if it's like, oh, I want this. It's like, you only have these two things, in my opinion, and that's it. But I do love what you said about just helping them shift that, like, right, okay, if you can just accept that nothing's certain.
Yeah, and maybe like, okay, maybe we need to, depending on the person, right? Like, and like maybe we need to explore, so what makes you so about uncertainty?
Yeah.
Like maybe just bringing that to awareness.
Yeah.
And then just realizing, oh, it's only like this thing, it's not this thing, so it's like, bringing things to awareness. And like, so maybe sometimes, we might explore, so when have you been in an uncertain time and it was actually okay?
Yeah. And that's a great example.
And how were you then? What tools did you use?
Yes.
So they realize, okay, I've actually been here before in other times.
Yep.
And this is what works for me. Because that's a lot of coaching. Like what works for you, works for somebody totally different. So
and sometimes
it's like finding your keys.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, I wasn't trying to interrupt, but I agree. And it's funny because I've been helping with people with this. And sometimes you're like, in my head, I'm like, oh, okay, so what do you do before? I've said those exact words, and I'm like, well, they're going to say this. And they go on this completely other tangent. And sometimes you're like, okay, you're excited about it, so let's do it. Other times it's been like, oh, that's way better than what I would have done.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, actually do that. That's great. I was like, yes, that's actually genius. I didn't have that answer, but I'm glad you did. Yeah. And again, it's not me to give them the answer, but especially with athletes, but it's exciting when they come to that and go, oh, right, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And you touched on it earlier, when you bring up those things, because they come up. I've heard a really good saying, and I'm trying to remember where I read it, but I heard it. It was because there's a fear there, right?
Yes.
And fear stops most people, and it was really cool. It's fear is an inch deep and a mile wide. So we look at it just like this massive lake, this massive thing. We're like, oh my God, we got to jump. Like, I got to address this crazy thing. No way, it's too scary. You're on top of the diving board, or you're on top of the thing, and I got to dive in. There's no way. And you put your foot in, you're like, oh, that was it.
Yeah.
Because and some people go, oh, no, it doesn't make sense. Well, again, think back of times where you have done that and went, oh, it actually wasn't that bad. Recently, I confronted one of my fears. It was just heights. I still don't love them, but I went ziplining.
Oh, I was going to say skydiving.
No, not there yet.
Not yet. Okay.
but this is my crazy wife was like, and I love her so much, but she's like, we're gonna go ziplining, and we did it, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this, but it was scary as shit, but I did it, and it was actually a lot of fun.
Yeah,
definitely. I'm not going to say like it was scary and I thought it was. It was about as scary. It was less. It was definitely less. But the first, like that initial is scary as hell.
Yes.
We were like we were 800 feet long and 300 feet in the air. That's just, well, no, it's scary.
Yeah.
But once you're halfway, you're like, oh, you know what? This actually isn't that bad. And I could sit here, and this is what I had the instant realizations. I could sit here and freak out and think, oh my God, I'm going to die. Or I could just embrace this.
Yes.
And then once I started embracing it, and then we had more, once I started embracing it, I was like, it actually was really fun. And really cool. And again, my heart was still going. I was sweating like crazy. Like, my nerves were going nuts. Like, it wasn't like it was just like, I'll just jump off. It was still intense.
Yeah.
But I'd look back at the memory and it was a lot of fun. Yes. And I would do it again.
And what's also good, too, when you face your fears is you become more. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. And yes. And then your tolerance for risk increases.
Yes.
And because sometimes you think of it's like, oh my God, it's this risky thing. And you're like, it's actually not that risky because people do it all the time.
Right.
Or, a good example is like airplanes or like starting businesses or whatever. Yeah. It's like people do that all the time and they're successful.
Yes.
Right? So maybe reach out to them or just see what they do. Success leaves clues.
Yes.
Right? See what they did.
It's interesting too, because like sometimes I was thinking about this today. Sometimes there's good comparisons and bad comparisons.
Yeah.
So
yes.
That's like a good comparison. It's like, okay, well, these people have done that. So when I was working at Good Life Fitness, or it was after. No, it was after, and I kind of branched off and did my own fitness thing. But there was a lady that that I had met at Good Life Fitness, and we were training together, and she trained for a race, and she was in a Weight Watchers group with another lady, and so she was saying how she's been training for a race, and this lady said, well, if she can run a race, I can run a race. So it's like that kind of like, it's like it minimizes things. So that's when like comparisons can work in our favor, and when they don't, then it, if it's comparing, oh, well, you're better than me, or you're not as good as me. That's bad comparisons. But good comparisons are when like, hey, if they can do it, I can do it.
Right, totally.
Sorry, I just went off on a tangent. But
no, that's it's really good because lots of times we do that, and I've done that. Yeah. I've done that with this podcast. I've done that with the coaching. I've done it, and it's like, good examples like every life coach and coach knows who Tony Robbins is. Everybody. Yeah. And you go, well, and I've done that myself. Well, I'm not Tony. Of course I'm not Tony Robbins. Of course I'm not some of these guys. But that doesn't, like, that's not even we're not even in the same ballpark. That's like being like, oh, I play football. Well, that means I can play football with these NFL guys. Not a chance. Yeah. Right? They're different leagues. Yeah. Complete. And that's okay. And it's
absolutely
good. And it's good because
Tony Robbins isn't the coach for everybody.
Exactly. Not to mention people that can afford it and have access to it or even know who he is. Mm-hmm. But there are people out there that will have access to, and so I think, like you said, is making a realistic comparison and a non-judgmental, but critically thinking comparison. So again, a good example is if somebody's trying to buy a house. Well, the market's this and this and this and this, and oh, my job, and oh, I don't know about all these things. It's like, okay, right. So you're worried about, let's just say, the market, right? Okay, well, let's look into history. How many times the market's gone, the inflation gone up, or interest rates gone up? Okay, who do you know that's gone through those periods? Oh, this person. Have you talked to them? Okay, how did they go through it? Okay,
it minimizes the fears.
Yes, and you're getting knowledge.
And exactly.
You're getting knowledge. Yeah. And I've said before, you're addressing it with a good attitude and good effort. Well, you have the attitude now. You're putting an effort to like just explore it. Doesn't mean you're pulling the trigger right away, but then you start talking to people and you go, actually, this is not that scary. Good examples. When I bought the house here with me and my brothers initially, I was like, oh my God, this is terrifying, this, and this. But you start talking to people and you start like, right, that's actually like, it's a jump for sure.
Yep.
But it's not like people do it all the time and they're okay. Yes. And things will be fine, but you just have to said it's worth digging. So, Anita, we're kind of wrapping up here. What would be some like final words of wisdom or some final gifts or maybe just something like that for anybody that's listening that is just wanting something that's different in their life, or maybe they're wanting to move through fear or some low place or some place they can start.
Well, I would say for like one thing I love to do, there's a little free exercise.
Okay.
is to like look at every area of your life.
Yeah.
So create a vision and make it your vision, right? Like, so it's not, you're not doing shoulds, you're not comparing, but it's like, okay, you know, like what is success to me? Or like, what would a 10 out of 10 in my life be?
Yeah.
Like physically, what does that mean? Get very, very clear. So it's like learning to get clear with yourself, learning to know what you want.
Yeah.
You know, in every area, like create your vision. Like I do that a lot with people and get clearer and clearer and like, well, what does that mean? How do you know when you've accomplished that 10 out of 10?
Yeah.
What will be different in your life? You know? So that's kind of a little exercise I like to do to work with people. Yeah. And then I would just also say like, you are your own unique person. You are a gift to the world. Yeah. And so you be the best you. Like you have unique strengths and talents and perceptions and experiences that nobody else has. Yeah. So like be your fullest best self.
I love that. And I think you said it so perfectly because I've heard it said before, when you have no vision, you have no discipline. Right? And so what a great place to start. And I was going to just add it a little bit. I've heard this before is to have that vision, but know where you are right now. So being like, okay, I want to be a 10, let's say I want to be a 10 out of 10 physically. Where do you feel like you are right now? Yeah. Because that's super important, because
that's your starting point.
That's your start. It's your GPS. It's the most important part, right? Where are you now? And then where do you want to go? So I definitely love that. And absolutely, like you said, it makes me think of like all the people that I know in my life that are just so amazing and have like these like skills that like, man, you don't see this. and if you saw the way that I see it or other people see it, you'd be charging more. And people would happily pay it, or you'd start your own business, or you'd be doing this in your life, or you'd be, or so you would be like, here's what you could do. Here's this potential in you. Yes. Here's this thing that is just like, you can look at a problem and see it a totally different way, or you can, look at somebody and hold that space for them, or whatever it is, or you can you can look at, you want to build this building? Yeah, I can do that. This. No problem. I'll do it right away. When do you want to get started? And it's like, really? But yet you're you're selling. You might be selling yourself short. You might feel that way, or maybe you're not. But look at what you want, and I think that's such a good message. And I don't think people hear that enough. And not that you're special. And I don't mean to be like, oh, you're so special. Like kind of remember me, but like, no. You have things that are unique to you.
Absolutely.
And that other people don't have, and unique experiences. Yeah. So how can you, and that doesn't mean you're like, let's give the example of somebody who wants to be in construction. They can just build anything you want. They're just good at building anything. And there's a lot of them out there. There's people out there, and they're working some other job. It doesn't mean that you're like, oh, you're ready to take on the world now as you are. I would add that as in like, okay, you're making steps. How did you get good at being a coach?
What, with me? Yeah. I would say practice. More practice. Learning from people. Yeah, like learning courses, learning on my own. Yeah. Having a coach, getting feedback.
Yes.
Accepting feedback.
Accepting feedback. That's tough because you're like, oh, what do you mean I'm not perfect? Yeah, right? Because that challenges the ego sometimes. That's hard. Yeah. But I would, exactly that. It's like, so you have that gift, and that gift, I would say, needs to be sharpened. It needs to be applied. Absolutely. It needs to be, and this is something I'm constantly trying to work on. And what I find you'll notice is when you start doing that, you get really excited. You're like, wow, I went from this to this.
There's more.
There's more. Or even just like a burst of energy of like, right, this feels really good, and really good like in my heart. It feels really good in my gut. And maybe you want to get into mechanics, but you're not sure and whatever, but you're really good at like just like fixing things. Well, start by fixing somebody and helping with that, not charging.
Yeah, start doing something.
Right? And asking the questions, like go to apply to a few places, ask some mechanics what the job's like just start taking action.
Yes, and don't be afraid to go through the messy phase, because the beginning you're not going to be perfect. You're going to be messy. Like when I remember when I was like learning how to ski, and it's like, okay, this is the suck phase that I must go through, so I'm going to go through it as fast as I can.
Yes, and that is such an important lesson. And to be honest, my wife is constantly reminding me of that. Like, remember, this is the phase where it's messy, and like you're gonna fall and we're gonna mess up, and it's a great reminder because we're not gonna be perfect out of the gates. To be honest, you're not gonna be perfect, probably, maybe never. Really, you're just gonna get better and better. You're gonna just get better. It's gonna be less and less, and the mistakes are gonna get smaller. Or and this is why talking to mechanics, talking to or whoever's in that field, talk to them and how do they do it? How did they learn? And ask them how many times you mess up. And it's like, right, like all the time. And again, if you follow people, Thomas Edison with the light bulb, great example. Everybody knows it. 10,000 failures, right? But it was just that one more time, and he got it. Henry Ford with the V8 engine, when he made it at the time, it was a single, I think it was single block engine. Anybody that's a car guy's correct, sorry if I'm wrong, but I think it was the first time he was casting a single block or one piece for this engine, essentially. Never been done before, but do it again, try it. Yeah. And he spent years on it until he finally got it.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of failure, a lot of mess, a lot of no's, a lot of people telling me can't do it. You're crazy. That's never been done. That doesn't make sense. But it worked. Eventually.
And circling back to our beginning, even talking about finances with this Marshall Silver guy, he's like, I have lost way more money than most of you will ever make in your lifetime. But he was, working on becoming a billionaire, and he wanted to make the most millionaires. And so here's all my mistakes. I made tons of mistakes. I lost tons of money. Yeah. And that's part of the process, but you fail forward,
yes. And absolutely. And that's, I think I've heard that say, that's like the intelligence, the rate of how fast you learn, right? It's like making the same mistake over and over again, right? Well, that's slow intelligence versus you make it once or twice and I got to change this. Okay, well, that's quicker, right? So just trying to make those mistakes or learn from them quicker.
Yes.
Right? So I really appreciate
your feedback.
Yeah.
The feedback that life and others are giving to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here I've heard this and I thought it was so good because I've had to take it and go no, and then I thought about that's right, is when it hurts or you get a reaction from it, it's probably true. A good example is if hypothetically if Anita's like, somebody's like, Anita, your voice sounds weird, and then you got upset about it, it's like, right, there's something there.
Yeah.
Versus if you're like, okay, like that's, thanks for the feedback, whatever. You're like, okay, well, clearly it's not, there's maybe it doesn't resonate with you, maybe not something you need to address. But if you get a reaction from it, it's probably something you really need to address, which is hard.
Yeah.
Super hard to do. I've had lots of those moments, and I'm like, God, my wife tells me, you talk too quick. And I was like, you're right. Damn it. Right? So yeah, I would definitely say that is just, like you said, is be willing to listen to that. And even more so, especially when there's a theme, you have one person say it, it's kind of like, but when you have people that love and trust that are saying it, and you're like, okay, there's something, okay, I probably should address this. Right. Yeah. Anita, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you for having me on the show. This was an awesome conversation. I wish we could go on for another an hour because there's so much we could go talk about. We'll definitely have to do another one. Maybe we'll all come up with something fun we could really dive into. But going over the money was just awesome, and just how to work through some of these problems and the uncertainty, because that's so prevalent these days. Yeah. And for sure. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad we were able to do this. How can people find you? And if somebody's like, hey, I want to reach out, I need some help, I'm feeling uncertain in my life, how can they find you? Yeah, so they can go to my website if they want more information, just to check out any kind of what the individual coaching is about, group coaching. So CoachAnitaReimer.com. Okay. How do you spell Anita and your last name? Yeah, so Coach and then ANITAREIMER.com. Perfect. Yeah, or email me at Anita@CoachAnitaReimer.com. Perfect. And you can. I'll tag. You can give out my phone number only to your people, though. That's and I can tag it to the video. Yeah, for sure. But absolutely, because I know more people need that, and sometimes we've seen this. It's like, I want that help, and you want to make sure the energy matches up. And so having that, and for anybody listening, like, don't be afraid to just reach out and see if it's right.
Yeah,
because a lot of times it is, sometimes it's not, and that's okay.
Yeah. I have like complimentary session to see, you know, for both of us to see if we're a good fit.
Absolutely.
And if it works. So that's
totally. I think
available.
I think that's wonderful, and it's so needed, and I love that you're doing that work, and I love that you're able to just help so many people, because, you know, it feels your soul. I can tell by your smile, I can tell by your eyes how excited you're getting about it. But yeah, just that, you know, and I'm sure your clients are super happy about it too.
I've got great clients. I only work with amazing people, so. So, hey.
Right? Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show. Appreciate you.
I'll get out.
So thank you so much for listening to this episode. I really appreciate you taking the time of your day. Hopefully you're learning from these episodes, as I know I am, especially with these interviews. They are so wonderful. If you want to support the podcast further, please like and share. If you haven't yet, you can go on Spotify and rate the show. That always helps. You can subscribe on YouTube. And then lastly, you can go to lifepurposely.ca, sign up for our newsletter there, where we are sending out weekly thought-provoking ideas and ways to help you live your best life and to live with more purpose, and tips and strategies that we find change our lives. So thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you on the next episode.